Thank you for that introduction, which I hardly need to say anything else. I just found great stuff, which is always a delight. So thank you for having me here today. I'm going to give you a quick canter, an overview of the UK ecosystem. So we're going to explore powering the future, explore the UK's mid and downstream ecosystem through the lens of the Faraday Battery Challenge. But I thought I'd actually start by sharing this particular slide. It's one of my favourites. These are the climate stripes. I'm not sure if you're aware of them, but they were developed by Professor Ed Hawkins from the University of Reading. And it shows you how the world is heating up. And since 1850, it's all nice and cool and blue. And then suddenly, by the time we get to 2020, we are breaking records consistently about heating. And the reason that I actually share this with you is, without global warming, I don't think we'd be here at this conference. I don't think that the need for critical minerals exploration would really be taking place. We'd be sticking with fossil fuels. But we do have a situation we need to tackle as an industry. So, the user case, though, that I'd like to really focus in on today is actually transport. Without global warming, we wouldn't be looking at transportation and how to change the propulsion systems that we use away from fossil fuels. In the UK, the context is that 27% of emissions are from transportation. And that's an interesting figure because it hasn't actually changed since 1990. It stayed stubbornly at 27%. And that's because every time an ICE engine became more efficient, we travelled more miles. So a different solution is required. Of that surface transport figure, 87% is from private vehicles. So it really is the car that is the problem. We definitely need to move to a better, more sustainable transport and propulsion system for vehicles. And if you look, it's interesting as well. If you look at the timeline, we have some quite key dates. In the UK, 2030 is when we stop selling petrol and diesel cars. So we can still have hybrids at that point, and we can still sell battery vehicles. But by 2035, everything's battery vehicles to deliver that net zero future of 2050. And batteries are the key to enable this net zero pathway. They enable, because of this long design process, and it's quite interesting the dots that have popped up, because of this long design process, we have to really look at the design of vehicles in a kind of 10 years timescale. It takes 42 months for the design of a vehicle to actually take place. It's a 10-year production run, they need it. So we're already hitting that 2035 deadline. We're already touching those kind of barriers. And again, if you look at that 2050 deadline, by the time you get to 2030, we will have had to move off so many different vehicles. We have to create those transition pathways today. And I would say that doing that through lithium batteries and critical materials, essential critical materials, is the key to that. So in the UK, we know there is a very large demand for battery growth. It's going to happen. So it's got a strong battery demand, and this highlights that this isn't just a UK issue. This is our prediction of where we think we'll be in about 2030. We think we need 5 gigafactories to provide us with 96 gigawatt hours per year of output. But that isn't just a UK's problem. That is a global problem. All countries and all economies will be transitioning in this way. So it really does highlight the amount of critical materials we'll need moving forward and the abundance of those critical materials, making sure those supplies are good and delivered in an environmentally and sustainable way. And the context gets slightly more complex because we actually know that new rules and legislation and policy are coming into play with the European rules of origin, meaning that 65% of the battery cell will have to be made within Europe, and that's Europe and the UK in this term. We also know that the Inflation Reduction Act, kicking in from 2024, will require 40% of the materials to be made in their area or indeed as part of one of their free-to-trade zones. And what this really is saying is that critical minerals are essential to our future developments, and the UK and Australia are already working in this space. There is a UK-Australia working group on critical materials, and both countries are developing and reviewing, rather, their critical mineral strategies at the moment. Now, as part of the Faraday Battery Challenge, we've explored where we believe the value lies in the battery. And we know that for cell materials, we think that is the key area here that we'd like to focus on with you guys today. We think that as 53% of the value of the battery is made, it's that cell material area. And we know that mining and extraction and primary processing are probably going to have to remain where geology and the economy dictates. But secondary processing, other materials, we think that should be in a location that facilitates compliance with the rules of origin. So moving on to consider the midstream, and once we've looked at where the value lies, it's really worth touching on the ecosystem in the UK. We have a vibrant, and I do mean this quite genuinely, a vibrant research and innovation landscape. These are just a sample of some of the projects we fund, some of the activities that we're undertaking. So not just the Faraday Battery Challenge, which I'll touch on in more detail shortly, but we have the Henry Royce Institute, which has capital infrastructure to look at critical materials as well as other materials and create advanced materials. We have Driving the Electric Revolution, which looks at power electronic motors and drives. We have Future Flight. We have the UK Critical Mineral Intelligence Centre, which is really looking about where the minerals are extracted from, and security of supply of minerals, SOS Minerals, one of my favourites, because of the acronym there. We've got the British Geological Survey active, and we also have many projects in recycling, from the circular economy network for transportation systems to ReLib that looks specifically at battery recycling. So it really is a vibrant landscape, and we're doing quite a lot of effort across research and innovation in this space. But to touch on the Faraday Battery Challenge, my own personal favourite, because I work for them, we are driven by two key visions and two key ambitions. And the first one is net zero. Without net zero, we would not be here. And so our key focus is to ensure that the UK automotive industry meets its net zero commitments in the required timescales. And that's the key bit. If we didn't have the required timescales, industry would probably be able to meet those demands itself. But as I noted at the beginning, the challenges are extreme and the timescales kicking in are quite soon. So the interventions that we're undertaking are there to help get over those required timescale barriers, fix that market problem. And linked to that, secondly, our other vision is to prosper from this just and fair transition across the country. It isn't always about, the golden triangle of London and the southeast. So it's how can we actually support our manufacturing across the entire country and develop that world-class intellectual and physical supply chain. But what does that mean in numbers? This project alone has been around since 2017 and is actually worth £541 million, which I think is about 1.1 billion Australian dollars. It is a massive intervention, and it really shows you that we're committed to this space. This isn't something that's new. We've been here since 2017, really thinking how can we create and ensure that we have that ecosystem. It has led to 96 projects being undertaken. So CR&D projects are collaborative research and development projects. And we've realised 120 million of co-investment through that activity. It's managed to retain jobs. It's pushed the average project up 2 levels of the TRL scale. So without that project taking place, without that support that we provided, then we wouldn't be so far in the TRL. But possibly my favourite stat there is 72 projects. And the 72 projects are involving academia and business. So it's creating that collaboration between research and leading it into commercialization, really answering the questions that our businesses and industry needs and requires. So this is really interesting. I do really like the slide, and if you have the chance, I would definitely look at the QR code. We've supported a report to be made that talks through the kind of wider ecosystem from an industry perspective. And the thing to note here is the value of the British battery tech startup ecosystem is 2.7, and I believe that is American dollars, 2.7 billion US dollars. We are the second highest enterprise value in Europe, and we are the third largest for EV battery investment globally since 2018. So we are very committed to this space. We do find it's one of our most interesting areas. So do have a look at that report. It does come up with some fascinating figures. But as part of the battery challenge, what do we actually deliver? How do we actually do what we do? So firstly, we undertake fundamental research. So that's at the TRL levels 1 to 3. And this fundamental research is undertaken by the Faraday Institution. So the Faraday Institution supports a number of different investments from, which I'll touch on again in a minute, but including everything from recycling to sodium ion. But they are very much at that fundamental stage messing with the chemistries of those critical materials. We then develop those ideas, we then develop the industry, and that is done through our collaborative research and development projects that we support. And lastly, we have built a factory. So we have the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre. And in essence, this is a facility that people can come and use. We don't take any IP, and they come and use and test out their chemistries. And it's got a huge array of different machinery and kit and options that you can explore and investigate. As part of our activity, we also wanted to take horizon scanning activities, and we also have a key focus on equality, diversity and inclusion, really making sure that the wider ecosystem benefits from that diverse planning and workforce. We also have a skills program as well, which really, again, is looking at once you have your factories, once you have that development, well, we need skills to be able to support that area. So we have a skills program to address that need. And we work with the Innovate UK KTN to deliver that. So the KTN used to be called the Knowledge Transfer Network. And all this leads to the fact that we're working in a part of a wider ecosystem. So we work with the Advanced Propulsion Centre, who have an automotive transformation fund of £1 billion to look at solutions to propulsion for different vehicle types. We work on policy, regulation and standards, and indeed create investor partnerships. So we're creating that wider ecosystem. And we're driving improvements in battery performance. I mean, this is really key to what we do. We look at sustainability, power density, we look at energy density, cost and safety. And safety is a key one because even today, some of the opportunities around micromobility are being hindered because we don't have enough information on safety. So you're not allowed to take your scooter onto a train in the UK because if anything went wrong, that train is too safety critical, so you're not allowed that. So how can we help address and prevent those barriers materialising? And this is through our triple track approach of deploying at scale those technologies that are ready. So that's really looking at through the UK BIC lens, making sure that they can be deployed. We're developing those that are not, and we're researching the solutions to problems of decarbonisation that we cannot get solved. And I love this slide for one other reason, which is we say it's a triple track approach, and then we added another bullet point, which is develop a skilled and productive workforce. So it's really a 4-track approach, but it doesn't sound as good as triple track. And we also look at other programs, which is really worth touching on. So we do work internationally, and we do look at what the international landscape is doing and undertaking, and we're very keen on collaborations internationally. We look at workforce development, infrastructure support, and indeed working with investors to make sure that we can exploit opportunities we have found. And to touch on my final few slides about some of the more granularity in the Faraday Institution. What we have here is some of their projects are truly astounding. They look at battery degradation, they do multi-scale modelling, they do electrode manufacturing, and then indeed beyond lithium-ion through solid-state batteries and sodium-ion batteries. But they also deliver studentships, they undertake entrepreneurial fellowships, they look at commercialisation as a work stream and do STEM outreach. So they really are encompassing, that was the word I wanted. And they have 500 researchers, so it really is a big, large-scale endeavour. From our innovation projects round 1 to 4, this booklet is getting updated. We've just funded round 5, but when you get hold of the slides, do follow the link, because actually that particular booklet will give you all the wealth of information that we have supported, and it really does support that academic and industry pull-through from innovation. And then lastly, we have our factory. And the factory is amazing because it has an electrode line for anodes and an electrode line for cathode. It does cell assembly, formation, module, and pack. It does all the mixing, coating, and drying. And you can access these gigascale equipment to de-risk your investment. I also like the fact that the customers retain full ownership of IP. We don't touch that. You buy the opportunity for the facility, if that makes sense. And it does everything from the kilogram to the ton scale. And this is the last slide. And if you take a copy of the QR code, it will take you through to our website. Because that's a lot of midstream activity, but it's all leading to downstream manufacturing opportunities. And we welcome opportunities to explore research and innovations with you all and align our objectives and activities. Thank you very much.